I like this guy. I relate to this guy. Once hailed as China, I'm not in a lot of ways, but in some ways. Once hailed as China's youngest university student, prodigy now content with sitting around. A former Chinese whiz kid who entered university at the age of 10 and was already a PhD candidate in applied mathematics at 16, spent his days doing nothing and relies on his parents for money. Oh, okay. Zhang Ziang has always been destined for greatness. At just 2.5 years old, he learned over 1,000 Chinese characters within 3 months. And by age 4, he was already in primary school. Born in a modest family, Zhang benefited from his father's tutelage and managed to skip several grades. At age 6, he was already in the fifth grade. By age 9, he was enrolled in the third grade of high school. When he was 10 years old, Zhang Yang became China's youngest university student, getting accepted into Tianjin University of Technology and Education. His genius surprised everyone, but as he grew, his attitude started changing. At the age of 13, Zhang began a master's program in Beijing, and while most other 16-year-olds were pondering what university to apply to, Zhang Ziang was already pursuing a PhD in applied mathematics and doing interviews with major news outlets. Uh, However, the media coverage wasn't as positive as it used to be. Just a month into his stint at the Beijing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics, uh, as a PhD student, the prodigy made news headlines for giving his parents an ultimatum. Either they bought him a Beijing apartment or he quit his studies. My parents want me to stay in Beijing, yet if I did not have my own house here, I would be like those Beijing drifters. If I am like them, why do my parents want me to get a doctoral degree? Interesting. Young Zhang said in a TV interview, adding that his parents should take the responsibility of providing me with a good living environment. Zhang Jiang's parents had always struggled to keep him in school, and his request was virtually impossible to fulfill. Okay, I mean, if your parents can't do it, they can't do it. Interesting. Um, Still, they couldn't bear the thought of him abandoning his studies when he already achieved so much. So they rented a Beijing apartment and lied that they had bought it. Zhang's father had also been a gifted child, and he could have been in the first generation of students in the MBA program at Renmin University when his family couldn't afford to tutor him. Now he hoped his son would achieve everything he couldn't and more. At the time, Zhang Jiang's attitude was criticized by the public, but that didn't seem to affect him. If anything, he doubled down on his statements, claiming that he wasn't the one driving them crazy, that they were doing it to themselves. My parents gave birth to me and imposed their dream on me, hoping that one day I would achieve what they wanted to gain in the past, the 16-year-old said. They planned my life for me, trying to make me think that what they were leading me to was what I wanted to do. Zhang's parents sometimes expressed regret for maybe pushing too hard. But they hoped that his success would justify their actions. However, things didn't play out that way. Today, at 28 years old, Zhang Ziang isn't the man most expected him to become. He still lives in the Beijing apartment rented from him years ago, for which they continue to cover the rent. But he has no job and spends most of his time sitting around and doing nothing. He believes his simple way of life is the true expression of happiness and is content with relying on his parents and the odd freelance job to support himself. They owe me this, Zhang recently told about his parents. The apartment they never bought me should be worth over 10 million yuan, 1.4 million now. Zhang Liang's story has divided the Chinese internet. Some criticize him for his arrogance and lack of respect for his parents, while others cite his case as a cautionary tale for parents who push their children too much when they should just let them enjoy their childhood years. Zhang Ziang's undergrad teacher told reporters that he still has time to achieve great things if he puts his mind to it, but that he has no intention of doing any work. There's no financial freedom when working for someone else. That's a joke. At least now I don't need to deal with the attitudes of others, said the 28-year-old.
Yeah, I mean this sounds like a guy that was pushed too hard as a kid,
Yeah, he
and
burned out.
he burned out. Yeah, which I can understand. Like, the stuff with the apartment and like expecting so much from his parents is maybe a little bit weird, but like I kind of sympathize with him because yeah, he is this guy that was pushed very hard as a kid, and then eventually one day he woke up to the fact that like he didn't have a childhood,
Yeah, this is his
and like
happiness. Like
yeah,
he's
and
trying
he's
to recapture. Yeah,
he's like you said, he got burned out. He busted his ass for like the first 16 years of his life or whatever to a crazy extent, and then he was just tired and like
Yeah.
I kind of get it.
I think the apartment thing is kind of weird, but at the same time, it might just be an excuse, like him like acting out, like, oh well, I did this, and you could at least do this for me. It's like it feels like maybe he was asked an impossible task, like in his early years, like to do all this stuff that he just wasn't mature enough for, and maybe he's asking for an impossible task in return. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like it. But he's still young. He's 28.
Yeah,
He
he's
can
got plenty
still
of
do
time.
something. Yeah.
I mean, in America, I've heard of like 98-year-olds graduating, getting their high school diploma or getting a college degree or something like that. Like, yeah, you can always go back. And I actually read an article recently about a guy who was a mechanic till he was like 48. Then he went to medical school and became a doctor. So, I mean, there's always time to like get your life back on track. So he can
Yeah.
do it.
Some people, man, like, because at any given time, like, there are, like, senior citizens in college and stuff. And, like, it always surprises me because I'm like, I just, I never like learning enough and like the school experience enough that like I would ever even consider going back as an adult.
Man, I'm excited about going back to school, but I'm also like dreading it because of all this stuff, like the studying and stuff like that. But it's a different program. Like before, I did what I felt like I had to do, like with technology and stuff like that. Like I felt like, oh, the tech industry's booming and this and that. There's a huge demand for it, whatever. Like it just felt like that's where the money was. But like, oh my god, that was so boring and just like.
Yeah.
But like now getting into like you know a different field that I'm more passionate about, which is interesting to me and has an everyday like impact on life. Like it can help you like improve. I haven't told people, but it's mental health counseling,
Right.
and like it applies to everybody in every way of life in every situation. So yeah, it's just like learning more about yourself. It's growing as a person, and it's applying something that is beneficial to you and everybody around you. So I feel more fulfilled in that sense.
Yeah. I often think because like if I could go back in time, like I certainly wouldn't. Like I kind of went to college just because it seemed like the thing to do,
Yeah,
and like
you have
maybe
to
it,
do it.
yeah, and maybe it was, but like if I could go back in time, I certainly wouldn't do accounting again. But I honestly don't know what I would do. Like I'm thinking, I don't know. I maybe even wouldn't go to college. I maybe would just try to pursue something more creative. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I don't have a great answer.
No, it's it's really a flawed system to have 18-year-olds and like young people and like just people who aren't ready and mature enough to decide what they're going to do for the rest of their lives at that age. Like, you make them take out so much money for loans and all this stuff, and they're just kind of like they're stuck. They have to do it, and like there's so much pressure by everybody in society that it has to be a certain way. And I think like it's smart to take time off, do what you want, like go out there and explore life, live, maybe do odd jobs or whatever you want to do in that time just to, get by or whatever. And then, then go to school, then figure out what you want to do, pursue what makes you happy and understand what your passions are. But there's no way a 20-year-old or whatever, like they don't know what they're going to do for the rest of their lives. When I think of getting married, like a 20-year-old is not going to be able, for the most part, to make a decision that's going to be wise for their entire life in any capacity. Like a tattoo, people regret anything.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, I'm glad I'm older when I'm looking, like to do some of these like major life changes because I feel like I have a better grasp on my own self and like what I'm looking for and who I want to be and what I want to be surrounded by. And yeah, like it's just nuts, man. Like to have young people make major decisions like that. I I get why we send them to war because they're not smart enough to know that, people up top are making decisions for them and that they buy into the propaganda very easily. And I think that same propaganda, like with nuclear families, like you have to move out at 18. Like it used to be big families. We used to live in like houses with like uncles,
Right.
grandmas, grandpas. You know, it used to be that way, and like now it's just the 3 or 4 person nuclear family or whatever. Like it's all generated from the 1950s like propaganda. You know that we're just trying to build a society that's we're trying to conform to something that we're not used to.
Although, funnily enough, I think that like because house prices are so expensive now, I think you're getting a lot more situations where like there's households with like generations of people living in them, because
Yeah,
like
for
the
sure.
younger people, like it's impossible for
Yeah,
them to, you know, go either rent a obscenely expensive apartment or buy a house. So like it's kind of coming back to that. But you were talking about like I know we're technically considered adults when we're 18, but like you're totally right that like almost no 18-year-old person like knows what they want to do at 18.
yeah,
Like we're expected to kind of know, and like you said, like we're expected to take this huge gamble and take out all this like loan money that we have like no real concept of like you know what we're doing with that, and
yeah,
like how long it's going to take for us to pay that back. And it's like it kind of is a crazy system and a crazy expectation. Um,
yeah. I mean, it's I know there's an industry behind it. Like you know, like there are loans like loan companies that want these 18-year-olds to be locked in for the rest of their lives and stuff like that, and there's like a financial incentive to make it this way. And like the housing market is this way. Like you want everybody to move out at 18 or 24 or whatever to get their own house, and you want to be able to sell those houses. Like there's an economy built on like this way of life, like it's not just this. Like cars, we purposely built out cities like Houston to be like hard to walk, like you have to have a car to get everywhere. Like it's amazing how much money and the economy and these corporations drive like the way of life of people, and it's sad in a lot of ways.
yeah, the whole like car thing and like everybody owning their own car. Like I sometimes wonder like if far fewer people own their cars and we just had like a robust like public transportation system, it would probably in a lot of ways work better because they would have so much more room on the road to like speedily and efficiently like transport a large number of people. But I sometimes wonder about that. Like we might have doomed ourselves culturally by like insisting that everybody owns their own vehicle.
Yeah, for sure. Like you look at like I find like there's like a romanticism, like I feel like there's a romantic like aspect to like people who live in those like Southeast Asian countries where like everybody's walking, and like maybe there's like motorcycles and stuff, but like there's like markets and the stands everywhere, and like everybody's kind of commingling and stuff like that. It just seems like that's more natural to people. Like that's what we should be, like a community, like a society like that.
Man, have you ever seen some of those foreign countries that seemingly have like no traffic laws, where you got like people in cars, people on motorcycles, pedestrians just all like walking, on the same roads, and like people are narrowly like,
That is
barely not
all
getting
of
ran over.
that's pretty much all of Asia. I don't know about East Asia, like China and Japan. I think they have more like rules behind that. But like, yeah, like it is chaos, man. Like I've heard jokes like God directs traffic in India, like it's just I don't know how people are surviving. Like I don't know how so many people aren't like killed every day in some sort of accident, but
I'm sure
oh
they
my god.
are, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
I see some of those videos, and I'm just like, why would they want it like this? Like, why would you not like want to put in traffic laws to like not have chaos everywhere?
I don't yeah, I don't understand. Like maybe they're just used to their ways. They're like, hey, we made it this far, it's helter skelter, but we made it work. Now this is just what we know. Um, but you would think like you would want to progress like that aspect of your society, and like, you know, try to make it more safe, more reasonable, more understandable. Like, okay, so like what if you're just an aggressive driver in Asia? Like are you just gonna like force every right turn? Are you gonna force your way into everything? Like, you know, it's more fair to have people wait at a light where, you know, some people who are more careful drivers, like the same commute would take an aggressive driver in Asia probably a lot different amount of time, right? Because like
Yeah.
compared to like a safe driver. Whereas in America, like, you know, everybody pretty much gets everywhere at the same time, you know? I don't know. I guess like I'm inclined to that fairness. Like I think it should be that way.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I
Yeah.
see some of those videos and I'm just like, oh my God. I'm like, it just seems like so crazy that they wouldn't want to rein that in somewhat. But